Welcome, everybody, to True Crime with the Sarge. I'm your host, Joseph Giacalone, and with us we have a very special guest legislator from the 13th District in Suffolk County and former Suffolk County Detective, Rob Trotta. Thank you for, I know you're a very busy man, so thank you for making the time for us tonight.
I'm not that busy, believe me.
All right, so we're looking to get into the history behind all the stuff with James Burke and Tom Spoder and the corruption behind all the stuff that happened in the beginning of the Gilgo investigation, basically. But I know you've been on the record the first time you met James Burke regarding I think you were a detective. I think at the time you were doing a car accident or a car stop, and he comes up to you.
I was not a detective at the time. I was in crime control. Okay. And I forgot whether it was a robbery or it was a car accident, but the road was closed. And he came up to me. I'm going to say this. He walks like a penguin. And he said, Trot, I heard about you. You're a heavy hitter. You led the county in arrest for a couple of years. I want you to work for me one day, blah, 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 blah. And then he goes, hey, you know where I can get a snuff film? And I got to tell you, I guess I was pretty naive. I didn't know what a snuff film was. And he went on to describe in detail, in gory detail, what a snuff film was. And this is a family show, so I won't really share exactly what he said, right. But it had to do with murdering a woman while you're having sex with her.
And I'm sure that was a bit of an uncomfortable kind of spot, especially he was a sergeant at the time, right? Oh, boy.
Lose something?
Yep. You froze up for a second there. So he was a sergeant at the time, right?
Yes. Someone else came forward after he was arrested and told the same story. And that person who's, I don't want to name, but...
Yeah, we don't want to name any names.
He was a high-ranking person in the police department who's no longer there. And he said another friend of his came to him and he said the same thing. I think it's a way he was testing people to see how you'd react.
Yeah, well, that's a hell of a test question, right? I mean, I would rather have seen something other than that. I mean, if you're looking for loyalty, that's not really the way to go, as far as I'm concerned.
This is a different world out here in Suffolk County. It's not like I don't think anybody's ever experienced. I hate to say it, but I've been a legislator now for 10 years, and I call it institutional corruption. They don't even know what they're doing is corruption. I mean, it's I can give you an example. Like, if my brother-in-law got a contract to paint the bathroom in my office, I would have to recuse myself from voting on that contract. Yet I could get a funding from a police union or a municipal union of $1 million and still vote on their contract. So, it's basically the unions run the county out here.
That's been some of the problem too with the super PACs and stuff like that. And, money makes things go around, right? I mean, unfortunately, we've seen a lot of problems in Suffolk, specifically with the criminal justice system over the last 10 years. So, at what point do you have any faith that it'll ever get fixed?
Honestly, I don't. Because,
okay.
18 legislators, there's 2 of us who refuse to take money from anybody where we have to vote on that contract. And we have a policy that as long as we can tell, we're not going to take money from anybody who has any business with the county. And it's ironic that the police union, who basically threw my old partner under the bus, had a press conference when he was arrested. I don't know if you're aware of this. John Oliva was a detective, friend of mine, a partner of mine, who was in the FBI with me, and Spoder and Burke railroaded him, arrested him. The union had a press conference throwing him out of the union, knowing damn well he did nothing wrong. And then subsequently, when Burke and Spoder get arrested, he sues the Suffolk County Police Department. He sues Suffolk County. Ironically, I'm the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee now, which settles the lawsuits. And I had to approve his $1.5 million settlement for false arrest. Now, you would think the police union would come forward and apologize and, we made a mistake. Nothing. Crickets. They're in bed with the politicians.
When Burke started first rising through the ranks, I mean, myself and many people still, we just shake our heads and wondered how this guy kept his job, getting caught with, or alleged caught with prostitutes in his patrol car and everything like that. How does that happen? How does he keep on rising through the ranks?
Money, power, the police behind him and the district attorney behind him. Look, make no mistake, under the Malone administration, he was owned by the police union. They probably gave him somewhere between $4 and $5 million in PAC money and super PAC money. They said jump. They said how high. They at one contract when I first became a legislator, they gave them like $4,500 for having a bachelor's degree, whether you had one or not. They grandfathered everyone in with a base pay increase of about $4,500, whether you had a degree or not. Period. Then on top of that, it was a time when there was like zero inflation. They were getting 8 and 9% pay increases. However, look, I don't begrudge the cops getting it, but let me give you an example. The Sachem School District is one of the largest, if the largest school district in the state of New York. The union president represents 1,560 teachers and nurses, right? He works 2 periods a day, has 3 periods off, and the union reimbursed the district for the 3 periods he's off. First vice president, second vice president, secretary, and treasurer are all full-time teachers. People complain about the teachers. Now, that doesn't seem unreasonable considering it's basically costing the taxpayers in the school district nothing. Now, let's mirror that with the police union. 1,400 cops, around 1,400 cops, 9 guys are full release making about $340,000 a year. They perform no police function. They're getting $15,000 for a canine dog they don't have. They're getting $26,000 for night differential. They don't work nights. They get, I think, $9,000 for hazardous duty pay. There's no hazardous duty pay. And they get like $4,000 for wearing a camera. They don't wear cameras. Those perks should be going to the rank and file young cops, not to some do-nothing union guys who sit up in this ivory tower doing nothing.
Wow, that's a pretty big indictment there of the current situation going on in Suffolk. You think that things would be getting better? It doesn't sound like it is.
No, the New York State Constitution is very clear. You cannot give a gift of taxpayer money away. Now, someone explained to me how giving a guy $15,000 for a dog he doesn't have isn't a gift of taxpayer money. But the problem we have, all the politicians aren't going to, no one's going to say a word because they're all taking money. There's only 2 of us who don't take money, myself and Anthony Piccirillo. Everyone else takes money. And it boggles my mind that it's still in this day and age, not ethically wrong to be taking tons of money and then voting on someone's contract. Now, the people say, why are the taxes so high in Suffolk County? I can tell you why they're high. It's very simple. We're paying 9 guys to do, I'm not saying they're doing nothing. They're doing union work. But guess what? The electrical union, the building trades are paying, the members are paying their salaries, not the taxpayers. The same thing with the electricians. I mean, it's unheard of that we are subsidizing, the taxpayers are subsidizing people for not working, for not doing their job. I don't have any problem if they want to pay 9 guys to do this, but let the union members pay it.
When you were on the task force with John Oliva and Willie Maldonado, correct? You were on and this was a lot of times there is confusion. This was a gang task force. This wasn't the Gilgo task force. A lot of times people get this confused, right? Could you explain what that was all about?
Yes, it was. We were on the violent crime squad, which we handled all violent crime. John and Willie were unbelievable MS defendants. And I was doing a variety of different things, buying guns, buying drugs. We had a big cigarette case going on. And, when I was there, the only really Gilgo information we had was we flew, the FBI threw a helicopter over this high-res, this is before drones, believe it or not. And they flew a helicopter over a very high-resolution camera. So it wasn't like, it's not like, this was the, I think it's a little bit of a fallacy to say that, it wasn't solved because they took the guys out of the FBI task force. I wouldn't say that was true. I mean, I think cooperation is good, but, murder, as you know, is really generally not a federal crime. But, it at the same time, they took, we're at the beginning of a fentanyl drug problem. They took 6 guys out of the DEA. There were guns being brought up. They took 2 guys out of the ATF. Burke and Spoda wanted nothing to do with the federal government. Because guess what? They were the only ones who could bring them down.
Right. And so a lot of times people get confused. They think that this was all because of the Gilgo investigation, but Burke doesn't really come into power until after Gilgo had already started, correct?
No, he was, Gilgo had started, and we were not, like, there was not an FBI guy assigned to the Gilgo early on. Because, look, that was, I hate to say, it was like almost like a comedy of errors. And while I'm not blaming anybody, in hindsight it's 2020, but when they found the bodies, they were all found very quickly. Within a few days, like 4 or 5 bodies were found. And I think what happened, I think more than I know what happened, I believe what happened was that the key piece of evidence, as any murder, you found 4 bodies. The one that was missing the least amount of time and found the soonest, that's your best evidence. And I don't think they focused properly on that, because the fact that they missed that whatever it was, the Avalanche, the green Chevy Avalanche, that is the key to that entire case. And ironically, I think Burke was not in power then. He was the head of the DA's office. I'm certain that he went to the guy and says, look, I'm going to be the chief of department. I'm going to be taking over. This is right after the election was going to win. You knew Malone was going to win. He was going to become the chief. I'm sure he told those detectives, you don't talk to your bosses. And I know the bosses didn't know about the Chevy Avalanche, because when it came out, a friend of mine was a former 3-star chief, and he was the inspector in charge of homicide at the time. He never heard of it. The chief of detectives, Dominic Verone, never heard about it. So I think there was Burke probably telling these guys, you report to me, not to them. I'm going to be in charge. And guess what? He was a charismatic guy. They probably did that. They just went along with it. And, they didn't tell him about it. Because, they were dumbfounded, the former 3-star chief, when he heard about that. He goes, I'd never heard about that.
Right. So it's just the lack of communication coming out from the beginning of the case, from the bottom all the way up to the top.
Yes. I mean, I think that Burke stymied it from going up. I didn't want them to know. Now, I wouldn't have been surprised if Burke was involved in this in some way. I still wouldn't be shocked. But I don't think, I don't think he did that purposefully. I think he just said, and guess what? The murder of prostitutes wasn't a big deal to Burke. That wasn't a high priority on his list. I remember when he became chief, he stopped all massage parlor investigations. They were to end. He just let them go. We have a proliferation of massage parlors here, with the Korean and Chinese people coming from the city and opening up these massage parlors, which are quite honestly more than massage parlors. So he did not, he didn't think of them as a high priority.
Now, when he gets caught with Loretta Rickenbacker, I mean, what's the temperature about everybody he has to work with this guy?
It's like I said, he was a charismatic guy. It was initially, if you want to hear the irony of that, how he got caught, it was when I was in that crime control team. I was off for a week, and they arrested a prostitute who gave up. Oh, there's a sergeant in the 1st precinct who was having sex with a prostitute. And they called internal affairs, and it went to internal affairs. And, because Spoda was his lawyer, he basically got off with a slap on the wrist. He got transferred out. Like, how do you get caught with a prostitute, found guilty, and not get demoted or not get fired? They just moved him from one precinct to another.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that everybody just kind of keeps on shaking their heads.
Yeah,
but, sorry.
No, that was the key to the trial. I mean, there was a letter written by my old boss, Timmy Gosloff, and myself, where we wrote letters to the transition team when Malone won, saying, look, you can't hire this guy. There's not a chance in the world this guy, he's a nightmare. He got caught with prostitutes. He lost his gun, blah, 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 blah. And that letter ultimately was a huge key in the trial, because Spoda they had gone to Spoda. And Spoda wrote a letter rebutting the letter, saying, oh, he did lose his gun, but it was in a burglary of his house, and that it was found later in a crack house. He had nothing to do with a prostitute. So that rebuttal letter was brought up in court, and they put the sergeant, who was in internal affairs at the time, on the stand. He goes, well, how do you know that Mr. Spoda's letter is a fraud? Because, and this detective, the sergeant from internal affairs says, well, I charged him with losing his gun to a prostitute. Well, how do you know Mr. Spoda knows? Well, he was sitting right next to him. He was his lawyer at the meeting. He goes, oh, really? How do you know that? He goes, do you have any documentation to prove that? He goes, yeah, here's a documentation of Mr. Spoda's signature accepting the 10 days that Jimmy Burke lost. So right then and there, Spoda's credibility is telling the truth was out the window. And the jury, I'm sure, just said, if this guy's lying to cover up Burke, what else is he going to lie about? Well, that was Spoda's downfall for
When Burke gets out from underneath that, where does he go after that?
Oh, he goes to the 4th precinct. That was shortly after when I met him on the side of the road and he had the snuff film comment. It was probably like within a couple of months after that. Like, I really didn't know who he was. Right? It was like sort of hush hush, and that was on the other side of the county. You didn't know much. You heard about it, and it was honestly hush hush with my crime control team. Apparently, it was just quietly swept up to internal affairs, and they handed up an. Spoda was the lawyer. Spoda was the lawyer for the union.
When you were referring to the case before about the most recent one, were you referring to Shannon Gilbert?
No. That was before they found Shannon Gilbert, they thought the Gilgo 4, I think, were the ones I think they were the 4 they found first. Some of them have been there for precious one right now. But she was only missing a few months, I think from September to December. That was your key. I mean, as you know, with any homicide, the person who was found last, missing last and found first, that's the most recent activity. And the guy swears about the Chevy Avalanche, they did it. And then, your old chief from the city, who I have no respect for, Harrison, like he said, hey, they had access to better data. Database.
I'm losing you a little bit. Rob, are you holding maybe the microphone? I lost you.
No, better now?
Yeah, that's better. Okay. So when the Shannon Gilbert thing finally kicks off, I think Shannon Gilbert was found a year after all of that. And Suffolk County Police Department was carrying it as carrying it as an accident, but the medical examiner is carrying it as undetermined. What's been the fight all about with the Shannon Gilbert case? Do you have any insight on that?
The only insight I have is that it's probably people are saying it's not related, that she just ran off into the woods and died. I don't know if she had a drug overdose, she drowned in the water. It seems a little odd that she happens to die. There's no such thing as coincidences, but, I guess it's possible.
Right. And then Christopher Loeb happens, right? So Christopher Loeb he breaks into his truck and he steals his bag of goodies. And there's a gun belt in there. Was there a gun in that bag?
No, the gun.
Okay.
The gun was not there.
Was there a proper accounting for everything that was in that bag?
Well, I think he came. Part of the problem was he let that motorcycle go by. Part of the problem was he went to the scene and took a lot of the evidence away. Like, I shouldn't say, a lot of his
personal belongings.
Yeah. Like, everything's supposed to be invoiced, photographed or invoiced, and it's only released at a later date with the DA. I mean, it was embarrassing items. It was sex toys or whatever he was going on vacation with. And he didn't want anybody, he didn't want the chief's sex toys invoiced.
Right. And this is what leads to ultimately Burke's downfall, right? So the cover up with the palace guards and everything else like that.
How ironic is that some heroin addict, well, ironically, it's about 500 yards from my legislative office, this whole thing happened. But I was still a cop at the time when that happened. I was in the 1st precinct when that happened. And honestly, I thought that was it. Well, let's go backwards. About a month earlier, I believe it was, he's on the cover of Newsday who came out having sex with prostitutes. And I go to the gym and there was a, what the heck is his name? Zito. Joe, what's his first name? Good guy. He was in the gym. He was like the deputy chief of detectives of the city of New York. He goes, oh, I guess you're going back to the FBI. I go, Burke's on the cover of Newsday for having sex with prostitutes. I go, you don't understand. This is Suffolk County. Nothing's going to happen to him. And ironically, unfortunately, I was right. Nothing happened. it wasn't until he smacked the kid around in the fourth precinct that 3 or 4 years. That happened in 2013 or 12, I think it was, and he didn't get arrested till December of 2015.
Yeah, 2015, and then Spota was after that one.
Yeah.
But so as you've been through Suffolk County, even when you're working in the police department and as a legislator, and as this case has progressed over the years, one of the things that bothers me, right? So Burke gets arrested in 2015, but this seems like nothing else happens with the case, right? So if they were told to report to him, about that green avalanche, don't say nothing, and the chief of some of the chiefs don't even know what's going on. What prevented anything from happening after that?
Well, I think what happens is it's in a box with 4,000 other pieces of evidence, phone calls coming in, suspects coming in, and it just got lost. I mean, the only thing I can think of is it got lost. I don't think anybody was devious, after Burke was arrested, that they were trying to hide this in any form. I just think it's a comedy of errors. I think that they made big mistakes, and they didn't, it wasn't until Ray Tierney comes in and says, okay, let's start from the beginning. And it was a very, very, a great New York State Police female investigator who ran with must have picked it up in a file somewhere, ran with it, ran the guy who the car was registered, came back as a 6'5", whatever, auger, and they pulled up his picture, and then it took off from there. I mean, I did think they were looking for the avalanche because I had heard that they were checking some kind of DMV records, and the rumor I heard was that they did a lawman search. They did it for like a 2008 to 2012, and it was like a 2007, something along those lines. They missed the parameters of what it was.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, for those watching, lawman searches when you have a partial plate and then you run it, and then you might get thousands of cars or trucks, whatever you're looking for, so you have to be careful looking for it too.
Yeah, but they knew that it was in Massapequa. They knew that it was, the phone calls were originating from Massapequa, right? They knew the guy was going to the city. So they knew there was a train station nearby. I mean, I think what they didn't take into consideration is that the guy could have walked to the train station. I don't have insight as to what their mindset was. And you have to understand something also. There's X amount of detectives, and you have 4 bodies. So you're running with, 4 different scenarios of possible murders. I mean, I think that, if the bosses knew about it, they might have said, "Wait, time out. Concentrate on the last person missing and the first person found. That's your best memory, your best evidence."
I got a question from the audience, and maybe you can answer it. Maybe you might not be able to. So, why was Detective Portello so adamant about not releasing the Shannon Gilbert 911 call? Why did it take so long for that to come out?
I don't know if it was Portello or it was another guy. What the hell was his name? I forgot his name. Nice guy. I don't know Portello. I know, but Portello was very, very friendly with Burke. I don't know the guy. I don't know who he is. I mean,
because after hearing it, right, after listening to it, it really wasn't as insightful as or it had like keys to this case as far as I was concerned. And then I was just trying to figure out why they would fight that for so many years.
I said the same thing. I have no idea.
I mean, because it just kind of added to the whole aura about cover up and everything else like that, and and it was just unfortunate.
I don't know.
When now there's several victims.
I think
left.
I lost you there.
Well, you froze up on thing, but I can still hear you. Can you hear me?
There? Yeah. You're back.
I'm here still. There you go. You're back.
I'm back.
There's still a lot of work that has to get done on this case. What, from your time on the job and afterwards, did you think there was one killer or more than one?
There's no such thing as coincidences. I thought maybe, some of the one male and the toddler might have been unrelated. I mean, that's a very desolate spot out there. I mean, I could see that maybe one could be unrelated or 2 could be unrelated. But generally, I think, he's probably responsible for most of them.
I'm in the same kind of boat with you. That I was a one person, suspect the whole time. But the issue that comes down to is that there are certain cases in there that I think are more solvable than others, like Peaches, right? So you have the Hempstead Lake connection to Gilgo with the baby doe. There was some talk about identifying Peaches, right, with the FBI, with the Mobile, Alabama police department. I think they kind of made a mistake when they posted it on Facebook. But I know you can't get into any specifics or anything like that, but are they working on all these cases at one time? Because I kind of got the impression that things were kind of put on the shelf for a little bit.
No, I think, I mean, given the fact that they just did another search at the house, and I find that they were searching out in Manorville, and then shortly thereafter they're doing a search of the house. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if there's more to come.
Well, considering that we had these searches all the way out east, and then of course the new search warrants, and I'm trying to explain to people they had to re-establish probable cause to get back in Rex's house. So that's a tall order.
Yes. No. Yeah, you're right, because I personally was just thinking, having listened to 1,000 phone calls, that it must, jail phone calls. Maybe they picked something up on the phone that he was talking about. Who knows? I mean, we'll ultimately find out, because that warrant will be, made public at some point. The probable warrant. It's going to be if it goes to trial, it's going to be an interesting trial.
Oh my God! And I don't think there's any chance this thing not going to trial. I just think that
you're right.
Yeah. The question is when.
Unless he finds God and just says, "Look, I don't want to go to trial." He's not getting the death penalty in New York, so he just might. Who knows?
Well, this is one thing that lacks, right? When you lose that leverage in New York when you have a local case like this, and I try to explain to people that the death penalty was more of a leverage thing than actually wanting to put somebody to death. But a lot of people don't understand that.
They don't get it. I mean, they're right. He has nothing to lose by going to trial, so he gets life in prison. They're going to do life in prison anyway. So I don't know. I mean, you got to understand. I don't understand what goes through a guy's mind like that. I mean, here's a guy who clearly has got some serious issues. Especially if he's one, I don't know the nuances of all of them, but he cut a lot of them up into pieces. And I'm assuming he did it at his house, because he's not doing it on the side of the road, right? It seems just given, the early ones, there were pieces found out east, and then there were pieces found on Gilgo Beach. And then when they found the pieces out east first, he probably stopped dumping them out there and said, "Oh, I better just dump them all at Gilgo, because no one's found anything there." Because if given the history of it, the first bodies they were found, the pieces of the bodies were found all out east, and then it wasn't
Manorville.
It wasn't until 2012 that they found the bodies, or 11, whatever it was. I'm losing track. I believe it's over a decade ago.
Yeah. Valerie Mack and Jessica Taylor, their torsos were found in Manorville, but whoever was responsible for those didn't take much effort into hiding them. He just kind of left them out there for the dog walkers to find.
Well, apparently Gilgo was no different. They were just off the road a few feet, and that was the difference. Down in Gilbert, she was in much further. It's hard to believe that they didn't back then. We didn't have the drones that we have, now. Like, my kids got a drone that you could fly up and fly right over everything and see everything perfectly.
But I'm surprised that no one has ever, it was pretty busy in the summertime over there, that no one ever complained about a foul smell. I mean, you have 4 dead bodies that close to one another. I mean, how do you not smell that?
You're driving, there's nothing there. And at the time, there was no bike path. So there was just no reason to be there. It was just cars speeding by. There's no stopping. There's nothing. So it's just like, if you were to pull over, dump them out, and be gone in 5 minutes, there's no reason, unless you got a flat top.
No. Yeah, no, I agree with you. But even that, with the windows rolled down, you're coming from the beach, you got to get a whiff of that. I mean, you smell an animal on the side of the road, you can get a whiff of that. But 4 bodies that close together, I can't imagine.
Maybe they thought it was a deer. Dead deer. There's a lot of deer out there.
Yeah, I know. Jeez, that's an awfully big deer out there. I mean, that kind of thing. So we have lots of new stuff that's going on there. Where do you think this case is headed?
I think it's headed to trial at some point. I mean, I think I don't know if the DA's got enough to charge him with other things. It really doesn't matter at this point. I mean, I think if he just charges him with these four and took him to trial, he's found guilty. And then maybe once he's found guilty, they get him to find God and come clean and, and say he did say what he did. If it did in fact do them, which I'm assuming he did most of them, or at least a large number of them.
Or at least a couple of them. So I got a couple of quick questions if we wouldn't mind running through some of these if we can. Sinead asks, should Shannon's case be reopened?
Who?
Should they look like a little Shannon Gilbert's case? Should that be reopened?
I don't think it's ever closed. I mean, I don't think any case is ever closed. I mean, they used to say that about Burke. Burke was telling people that, the investigation of him is closed. Look, having worked in the FBI for 10 years, I can tell you that no place is ever closed. It's always can be reopened, or is always opened and always reviewed.
CH says here, how would you approach dismantling the institutional corruption in Suffolk?
Move to somewhere else and not listen to the news. Honestly, it's very hard. It's money. It's money is the root of all evil. Whoever said that 100 years ago was not wrong. I mean, it boggles my mind how institutionally corrupt it is, and they don't even think about it. Like, I don't want to, just pick specific instances, but we have members of the legislature that have been arrested for strangling their wives and still sit on the legislature, and they're supported by the police union. Now, can you imagine if that guy went against the police union? They'd spend $1 million on him. He's a wife strangler. He owes, or I'm not going to say who it is, but he's
don't please. Yep.
It's all public knowledge, the case was ACOD. If he's not, but it's just like, it boggles my mind that they allow us to take money from a union and then vote on that contract. It's just, and it boggles my mind that the union, I don't know if you're aware, but what they've done to you, I'm a retired cop. I have no love lost. I love the cops. The union officials, forget it. But clearly, during the Burke investigation, they were sending the union officials to sit with every single cop and report back to them what that cop said. They threw John Oliva out of the union, called him a criminal, had a press conference, all this stuff, knowing he did nothing wrong. The union that's supposed to be protecting their members sided with the management. Who's Jimmy Burke, the corrupt police chief? He went to federal prison. Now, you'd think the union would go back and say, look, we apologize, we made a mistake. Crickets, nothing. It's insane. Look, I'm coming to that in 20 months I'm out. And, quite honestly, I've had enough.
The microphone got blocked a little bit again there.
Just, I don't know what got blocked, but, I have 20 months left. And,
that's
couldn't be happier about it.
I hear you. I just want to take a quick shout out to Forrest Nelson. Thank you for gifting those memberships for us. I really appreciate that. When all said and done with this Gilgo case, do you think that there's going to be cases outside of Gilgo that might be attached to individuals or maybe even Rex?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not I don't have a lot of insight into that. I mean,
right.
The DA is competent. He's systematic. He goes through everything with a fine-tooth comb, and he's. I have the utmost faith in him. I mean, some things I don't agree with him with, but in this case, I think he's doing a good job.
Now, Spoda's, I guess he's going to be getting out of prison eventually, right? In maybe another year or so. I think he's got left.
Yeah, one's out, or McPartland is out.
McPartland's out. Burke is out. We know that he got arrested again a couple of months back. But that's a whole other story there. I mean, the guy he's just a gift that keeps on giving.
Yes.
He just never seems.
That's exactly in our text messages amongst all the retired guys. Just like a Christmas all over again. I really wish Willie Maldonado, he passed away of colon cancer. I wish he could witness, could have seen all what happened. Because he was a really great detective, a really great guy. Again, another guy railroaded by the union. And, it's just unfortunate.
When do you think we'll ever get down to the bottom of some of these other situations that happen in Suffolk, with Spoda, between the John Pius case, or what kind of fell apart, and Marty Tankcliffe. I mean, a lot of these cases that he was involved with just fell apart.
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of things. Unfortunately, I'm the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. I see guys, that we're given millions of dollars that were. I'm not even going to say they probably, in researching it, there was good reason to believe that these guys committed crimes, but they didn't follow the letter of the law, and they got off. And now they're suing the county. I'm sure one or two of them didn't do the crimes. I'm assuming they didn't. I hope they didn't, because we give them piles of money. But like in the case of Marty Tankcliffe, I actually was sort of remotely involved in that. I always ask myself this one question: if you don't care how, he was 17 years old at the time. If you find the bodies of your parents and you get blood on you, would you shower before you called the police? No, you would call the police. You wouldn't shower. And he showered after he found those bodies. That's the one thing that sticks in my mind. I mean, I could talk about this whole case for a while. I find I was one of the legislators who voted against giving him the money. Then when he sued the county for false arrest.
Somebody asked a question: what is the Ways and Means Committee? What is it? What is the way? What do they do?
That's all the financial stuff. It's like we settle the lawsuits, anything to do with people suing the county, expenditures of money. We have oversight over like the county attorney's office and the board of elections and a variety of different things. It's just one of the committees that runs the county. But the biggest thing is settling lawsuits, and we have a lot of.
Since the arrest of Burke at one of these cruising spots at Bold Hill, has there been any more consolidation or some crackdown on some of these other locations in response to that? Because everyone knows that live on Long Island, they know these places exist. I mean, this is no big secret for those of us that live here. But for those that aren't and they're listening now, is this a big problem?
It's I almost sort of call it a victimless crime. I mean, in this case, it was they were there because it's happening during the day. A lot of these places are, are somewhat parks. This is a Vietnam Veterans Memorial, and it was 10 o'clock in the morning. So I think that the other places, the parking rides, all these parking rides along the Long Island Expressway are known for, that type of activity. Do they crack down on it? I think we used to, go through there once in a while just to chase people out. But that was a weird day. That was people were sending me like basically live pictures as it was happening. Him getting handcuffed, being brought out of the car. It's almost getting sad for that guy. He's if he wasn't involved in any of this stuff, and I hope he wasn't. It's just like it's I don't want to beat a guy when he's down, but this guy's down pretty low. I'm actually shocked he still lives around here.
Yeah, I think when he got arrested, I think myself and a lot of other people were even shocked that he was even, like I said, hanging around still. I think I would have been packed up and gone somewhere that no one would have ever found me.
I know. It's a weird thing. So, the guy was like, but guess what? People, when I say that, like I almost feel sorry for him. People say, what, are you kidding me? That guy wouldn't care one bit about you. And he didn't. My story was I was testifying in a $30 million money laundering trial in Costa Rica for the Costa Rican government. I fly back to New York. I get transferred to a precinct, and then I handled copper burglaries. I literally went from the pinnacle of law enforcement to the basement because most of the copper burglaries from boilers in the basement of these houses. My mind was going to mush. I was right, and then then Burke came out with an order saying we're not allowed to talk to any federal law enforcement. We have to notify our supervisor, who has to notify the division chief if we're to talk to anybody. So now the FBI is calling me up on cases. They're calling John and Willie up, and we can't even talk to them. I mean, what planet is this okay? It's ridiculous. Right. I mean, I blame a lot of this on the county executive. The county executive was a coward. Make no mistake about it. All these things that we've talked about. When I first got elected, I cornered Steve Malone. I told him about enough film. I told him about how this guy was a bad guy and he better get rid of him. And he told me in no uncertain terms, I stand by him. He's my guy. And I told him a few things about, well, you're out of your mind, buddy.
Shaniqua Terry, thank you very much for that subscription. Here's the problem now. Burke is becoming the fly in the ointment because now Michael Brown has asked for all the FBI files, asked for everything else. And then we had the symposium in January with John Ray with an affidavit saying that Burke and Rex were at a party together. How is this going to impact, or what's the talk of the town?
Well, that's a very interesting thing. If in fact that's true, it'd be very interesting. I don't know that to be true. It's I mean, look, the attorney stands to make a lot of money, and the taxpayers are paying his bill. So, look, he's going to do whatever he can. His job is to create reasonable doubt in which any way he possibly can. And if it brings Burke in, like you said, it's a gift that keeps giving. It's just, it's crazy.
Do you think that's a potential problem for Tierney, though?
No, what is this physical evidence? You have DNA linking them. You have, cell site analysis. You have the avalanche. You really can't argue with DNA unless you have Burke's. And they know they have Burke's DNA because he was a federal prisoner, and they take all federal prisoners' DNA. I'm sure that he'll be excluded through that. I mean, if they were at a party together, that really doesn't mean much. I mean,
I'm going to ask one question. I don't know if you're going to be able to answer. Las Vegas had fought New York and Suffolk County to get Rex's DNA because they thought they had cases that were similar to the ones that were happening on Long Island. Have we ever heard any follow-up with that?
Yeah, from what I heard, there was nothing in North Carolina and nothing in Arizona. That's what I heard. I don't know if it's. I think I read it in the paper.
Right. Yeah, so the Las Vegas one is still the one that I'm still curious about because they fought to get his DNA. That the state didn't want to give it to him.
Well, I think they have to give it to him. I mean, they could.
Well, New York doesn't take it unless it's a conviction. So they had his DNA, but New York doesn't hand it out unless you've been convicted, unlike other states that take it upon arrest. So that was the problem.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting. It doesn't.
Nothing. So that's something.
New York. It boggles my mind. Some of the laws that they've changed, like a guy could shoplift 4,000 times and just get let out an hour later. And the governor wants to do a symposium on shoplifting and crime. I don't know what planet.
Yeah, well, I can make it easier for her too, but I don't think she'll listen to me either.
Yeah.
But is there anything about Burke and your story behind Burke and Spoda that I didn't ask you today that you think that would be good for the historical record?
No, I mean I find it very interesting about how they met and how at 13 or 14 years old, a young Jimmy Burke meets a young Tom Spoda, and this relationship blossomed for whatever reason, and why Spoda stood by him is the real question. People can read into what I'm saying. I find it odd that someone would be so enamored by or held hostage by Jimmy Burke is to jeopardize going to jail for. It's crazy. This is a weird county out here. It's there was a New York Times story years ago that I was in that talks about that it's the county where the cops call the shots. And make no mistake about it, they call the shots.
Is that the Gus Garcia Roberts article?
Sarah Stockman. It's a New York Times editorial. She interviewed me. She flew into New York because I was talking about how are we paying a guy $15,000 for a dog he doesn't have? Why are we paying this guy 3-tour night there for $26,000 a year? He doesn't. Why are it's against the law. The Constitution says you cannot give a gift of taxpayer money away, but no one's going to fight it. Like, wouldn't you think the county attorney would sue? Look, I'm not picking out the Republicans or the Democrats because they all take money from them, both of them. I mean,
and you had Sorry.
I'm sorry.
You have proposed legislation to try to recoup Burke's pension, correct?
Yeah, that was a whole nother thing. They Balone called it ridiculous, stupid. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm a two-bit lawyer. And then guess what? About a month later, he realizes I'm right, and he says I'm going after it. And he's on the cover of Newsdays. Balone going after Burke's salary and voted. Meanwhile, they called it ridiculous a month earlier, and they I knew they were never going to do that, and here's why. Who's the first person they're going to depose? But Burke's lawyer is going to depose Steve Balone, and here's the first question they asked him: Mr. Balone, you picked this guy. He's the chief. He's on the cover of Newsday for having sex with prostitutes in his police car, and you don't fire him. And now you want his salary back? You knew what he was about. You got a letter. He was on the cover of Newsday. You saw it then. And for 3 years after that, you stood by him. The county would be sued. You couldn't win because he knew all about it and did nothing.
Boy, oh boy! Just when you think things couldn't get any worse, right? For Suffolk County, it just seems to get worse.
It's crazy out here. It's literally insane. Look, we just had a bill. We have two registered conservatives on the legislature. They voted for a bill that gave 9 apartment units reduced rent for recently released convicted criminals, and only 4 for veterans. First of all, why I have, we have constituents whose kids can't find apartments, they're too expensive, but we're going to subsidize them for convicted criminals and give 9 for convicted criminals and only 4 for veterans? And these are conservative Republicans who voted for this. Why money? The developers. This is what we want. They want to build all these apartments. They want Suffolk County to look like Queens. I put a bill in that says, look, if you want to build an apartment building, more than 20 units, half of them have to be owner-occupied, condos or co-ops, because we are robbing an entire generation of building equity. When you were a kid, you bought a crummy condo, you bought a little house, you fixed it up, and you moved your way up. Now they want you to be like the city. Rent an apartment for the rest of your life, pay $3,500 a month rent, and in 5 years have nothing to show for it. Go to Queens if you want to do that. Don't do it in Suffolk County. But guess what? The legislature is going to kill my bill because of money. It's a crazy world.
It certainly is. So, is there anything else? I'm going to ask you this one last time. Anything else about Burke for the historical record that I didn't ask you about, or I didn't know, or is there something that never got published before?
No, just that he was I'm sure you read the Internal Affairs things about how he was allegedly trying to open up a topless haircutting place, and Internal Affairs was following him, and he made Internal Affairs and shut the place down. And then he was going to lead and it was like with a girlfriend of his, apparently. A girl I ironically went to high school with. She was a couple of years younger than me. But that was one of the things that, he was alleged. The guy from Internal Affairs told me they were following him, and that he was trying to set up this topless haircutting place that was supposedly allegedly going to turn into a prostitution thing.
I never heard of that one, so I'm glad you told us that one.
There's a couple like that. There's a couple like, there's a place, I forgot the name of the place, the topless place on 110. I forgot the name of the place.
Gossip?
Gossip, yeah. That he would bring girls, down there, you go in the back room with them and pay them. That was always a big thing. And
that was in Gus Garcia's book. Had him on the show. Yeah, that's he wrote about gossip.
Yeah. There's a couple of things like that. But I don't know. Look, it's like, how does that guy become the chief of department?
That's what I'm asking you.
What? The unions loved him. Like when he came in, the sheriff's department was like patrolling. It used to be the Suffolk County Police Patrol the Long Expressway. Then under the Levy administration, they gave it to the sheriffs. When he came in with Balone, he immediately put the Suffolk County Police back on the Long Expressway. And he had this big thing at night when he called it, got on the radio when everyone in the whole county could hear him saying, "We're back on the highway. We both, we're back. We're throwing the sheriffs off." Like, he was this big showbiz guy. He had these things, meet the chief. Like, if you worked what was it, a 3 to 10 or 3 to 11, you got off at 10 o'clock. You went to this auditorium at Suffolk Community College, and he stood up on the stage with all these cops and was giving them a rah-rah story about how I got your back now, and this big thing. Oh, I'm the chief. Things are going to be changed now. Then go out and be with a prostitute. It's bizarro world.
Well, on that note, legislator, I'm going to leave it at that.
All right.
I'd like to thank you for your time and the stories. That was fantastic.
Okay, we'll talk again.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Take care. Bye.